Welcome to the Innovation World podcast, your go-to source for all things innovation, invention, and entrepreneurship. Our website is www.innovationworld.org.
Welcome to the Innovation World podcast series. My name is Julie Shively, and I am the founder of Innovation World and the co-founder of the Global Innovation Field Trip. I'd like to welcome our co-host this evening, Jake Mendelson. Say hello, Jake.
Hello, Jake. I'm sorry, that never gets old for me.
Nor for the audience, I'm sure, Jake.
Julie, what is the Global Innovation Field Trip?
The Global Innovation Field Trip is a fantastic event. Happens once a quarter. It's an online, multi-country celebration of young innovators. And it's 24 hours long. It starts, if you're in U.S. Eastern Time, it starts at noon on a Saturday and ends at noon on a Sunday. And in fact, our guest tonight that we'll introduce in a couple minutes, we met on the Global Innovation Field Trip in July. Our next Global Innovation Field Trip is October 15th and 16th, and it's a great opportunity for all young innovators out there to join us on this inclusive platform and share your innovation story. You select a 10 or 20 minute 10 or 20 minute presentation spot, and you can tell the whole world about what you've done. And it can be any type of innovating at all. And it's fantastic. We actually held our 10th event in July, which Ms. Rei Burke was a part of. And we are somewhere hovering around 700 presentations now. I think 1,065 presenters have participated from 54 different countries. So we're really excited about the growth of this program and how inclusive it is. And we will see you all October 15th, 16th. If you're interested in signing up, go to globalinnovationfieldtrip.org. How'd I do, Jake?
Oh, great. The only thing is, did you mention how much it costs?
I totally forgot. It is absolutely free. It does not cost anything to present, and it does not cost anything for you to watch. We do this over Zoom webinar, and then the event is simultaneously broadcast live over our YouTube channel. So you can watch from the safety of your own home if you'd like. All right.
Great.
Okay, well, having said that, I think that I would like to introduce our guest, who I mentioned was on the July Global Innovation Field Trip. Her name is Rei Burke. I think that she is a resident of Canada. Is that correct, Rei?
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay, so what I want you to do, Rei, is introduce yourself. Tell us maybe what grade you're in, where you go to school, and then you can start right into your presentation, and we'll ask questions at the end, unless we interrupt you and ask them in the middle. All right. Thank you.
My name is Rei Burke. I'm a citizen of Canada, and I live in Oakville, going to Sunningdale Public School, and I'm going into grade 8 this year. And the presentation and idea that I've been really interested in recently is educational psychology, and more just how we can change, just little changes we can make in our school system to just have students a better chance at succeeding and a more inclusive place for students to be. So without further ado, I'll get started into that. So what I call this project was how students think, and how easy it can be to create a better space for students to work, learn, and play, and what we have been doing wrong from the start. So a quick intro is, let's talk about how our schools are currently set up as they are. So our schools are pretty inclusive as they are. They're set up to match up with parents and their 9-to-5 schedules. They're also set up so that they take up most of the day, but they also have breaks. So overall, just in the basics, it's a pretty good schedule that's been created. But why is it so important to talk about the little details? Is because for most people, especially in North America, you're in school for 12 years of your life and for 5 days a week. So that's a very long time to be in school. That's a very long time to be spending in an educational environment. So I think it's very important that we are able to improve every little bit that we can, because students just spend so much time of their lives there, and this is the place where they learn the most, or this is where they learn a lot of the things that they're going to take into the rest of their lifetime. So now we'll talk about how well our teachers and educational workers are really understanding us. I think for the most part, they're doing a pretty good job, but this is one of the other things I'm going to talk about later, just focusing on a bit of mental health and what students need for their mental health, because we have lots of things that we're seeing that are starting up about mental health, but we need to ask our students what they need, especially, instead of just deciding what they need. So without further ado, I'll begin. So I'm going to be talking about 3 main things today. For one, I'll be talking about some of the biological factors, which is sleep, exercise, body changes, and more. I'm especially going to be talking about sleep because I found that this was a really interesting topic for me, and I did a lot of research into this. The second thing I'm going to talk about is assessments, which is one of the big problems. Well, not problems, but things that we need to improve on in our school systems that we can make more inclusive for all students, and what the problem is with standard assessments. And then the third thing I'll talk about is some psychological factors, which is some mental health, workloads, learning changes, and some other little things. And then a quick conclusion at the end of what to take out of this presentation. So let's start off with the biological factors and what students can't change. So first, let's talk about my biggest area, which is sleep. So I was able to collect a little graph, which you can't see now, but it's just talking quickly about how much sleep students need per age. So for the most part, students 6 to 13, which is mostly your elementary school, sleep needs are still pretty high for kids and youth like this, because they're still growing, and especially at the end through 12 to 13, you're going to see youth starting to go into puberty. So the sleep needs are still high, but you're going to see more requirements for school and extracurriculars. That means that bedtime might be slightly later in your 9 or 10, but a good 9-10 hours of sleep is still best for them to have their best focus. But then for 14 to 17, it's still around the same amount of sleep, but since you're finishing your puberty or going deeper into it, your body, because of the hormones, what's happening to your body is what you're going to see happening is your body is going to, it's going to fall asleep later. The hormones like melatonin to help you sleep are going to kick in later in the night, possibly even closer to 11 p.m. or 12 a.m. But you're going to need to wake up later. You're going to want to wake up later because that's just how your sleep schedule is just shifted a few hours. So obviously this is kind of a problem for high school because high school is generally earlier than elementary school. So I think this is always something we can change, but I understand that this isn't something that schools can do right now. So we can talk about how you can adjust to the schedules of school while you are a teenager and going through hormonal changes. So first here, I have another graph, but I'm going to just explain it for my audience here, just talking about some of the best times to schedule your classes, because especially when you're going through puberty and your hormones are just spiking a lot, these are just the times when each thing is at its highest point. And so if you have the choice, if you're in 11 or 12 maybe, or for grades, and you do have the choice to decide when you want to take your classes, there are some times where taking certain classes are ideal. For example, at 10 a.m., you have your peak in logical reasoning. So it might be best to take your math or your science or something that maybe needs lots of numbers and memorization. Around 2 p.m., you're going to see your best coordination. So maybe if you have an art class that you want to take then, or a gym class, also good to take around 3, because at 3 p.m. you have around your fastest reaction times. So this is just a few examples of some of the different times that hormones are at their highest. I don't think I have the time to explain it now, but I do have a schedule for where each subject is best if you are at a grade high enough where you can switch them around. So I'll have my email at the end of the presentation, and if anyone would like to see that schedule, you can email me and I would gladly show it to you. So quickly, we'll just talk about teens versus youth, because I've been talking a lot about puberty and how it's different. So youth there's less need for sleep changes, but they do, at this time, they should learn about how their body is going to change, sleep-wise included. And then for teens, there's some major sleep changes, and they need to learn how to adjust their sleep schedule properly, which is what we're going to talk about. So what I call this is sleep training, which is, you might hear it for babies, how you're training them to sleep a full night, but you can also teach your kids how to adjust for school. So it's just a fairly simple idea. What all you do is just have or if you're listening to this as a teenager yourself, you can just do this for yourself. Just slowly starting to go to bed earlier and earlier, even just by 10 or 15-minute intervals, and just so that your body will slowly get used to it. So that this is a good thing to do over summer, like now, so that over time, if you just get used to sleeping earlier and earlier, you'll start to wake up earlier and earlier. So then you'll feel more refreshed in the morning, and your wake up call and your alarm will feel less forced. So quickly, before I move on, I'll just talk about screen time for a second, because I know, especially for parents, this is something that they worry about. So for starters, for kids younger than 4, not much is necessary because they're just still discovering things in the world. So just having them on technology all the time isn't the best thing. So personally, this is just my opinion, I think maybe around an hour a day or less is best, but this is my personal opinion of what I think and my suggestions, but I know that it's different for every family. So for youth, I'd say make sure to limit the screen time, but don't completely cut them off from it, because you're going to start needing this for school. So they're going to need to start exploring technology and using it more, because just knowing the school system and knowing how this is going to help for their success, you need to let them explore it, but of course with safety restrictions. And then for teens, more screen time is fine. I think personally, they're probably using it a lot more in schools. I know I've been starting to use it a lot more as I get older. Like I said, much needed for school purposes. So those are my personal opinions on that. So now I'm just going to talk about the assessments, which is my main focus of what I think we can change. So the reason why this is so important to me is because, just quickly, the reason why it's so important is because I think that this is one of the main reasons why a lot of students aren't succeeding at their best, or just looking like they aren't succeeding at their best, because maybe they know all the information, but their assessment type just isn't right for them, which I'm going to get into a little bit later. So I began this journey into seeing what changes I can make into my school in this year, starting late 2021, early 2022. It's when I began this journey. The first thing I did was when I visited there was an event called the Super Council, and it was open for teachers, parents, students, just for one day to talk with an organization in our school board of what we want to see changes in our schooling system, in the board, and just in general. So I decided that this was interesting. So I went and I talked about assessments quickly, and I thought that this was really going to help. And I think it was, but it was more of a long-term thing. So I knew that I needed to keep focusing on this if I wanted to make a change quickly. So the second thing I did was with one of my friends, Yanina, who was a co-host for one of the days at one of the gift days. We met with our trustee. We talked to her about some of the things we wanted, and we brought them up with her so that she could bring them to. Just having someone on the inside is important. So I think it was really helpful that we talked about it, but I still didn't think that this was enough. So third, I decided to bring it to my school personally, and me and Unina made a video for the staff at our school of what we'd like to see changes, because of course we can't force the staff of our school to do anything, but we thought it was important to let them know what we really wanted. And as well, in this project, I conducted a survey, so I did have proof from some of the other students in my school, just so that they knew what we needed. And then finally, I've brought it here to gift, to bring it global, because I just think that it's important that everyone around the world is aware of this, because just like I said before, education is just such an important thing that we spend so much time in our lives on, and we just need to make sure that we have the best chance of succeeding for those, either whether it's 8 or 12 or anywhere in between, any of those years. I think we need to make the most of them. So let me talk about my idea. So 2 of the survey questions I have that were relatable to this was, I asked 2 questions in this section, which was, do you think tests are good for your learning style? And when I talk about learning style, I mean when each student has their own, maybe their visuals, so they need to see something on paper for them to understand it best, or if they're auditory, they're best when they hear it, or bodily kinesthetic, which is touching things and building things to best understand. So I asked, do you think your tests are good for your learning style? And 40.4% said they weren't sure, and 22.8% said they didn't know. So I thought that this was pretty, I was like, there's still a fair amount of people saying yes, but there's still quite a few people saying no. So I think that this means that there needs to be some changes. And then the second thing I asked was, is everyone's learning style being accounted for? And 61% said not sure. And then another 15% said no. So that was a pretty big percent of people being like, maybe they're not. So I thought that this was still enough evidence for me to be able to bring it up to different people and show them that a lot of people in our school weren't satisfied with what was happening. So now for my solution is that I've talked to many people about, but just simply having different options, because at the start of every year we did a survey where we would do a questionnaire where you would find out which type of learner you were best at, but this never really came in handy throughout the year. We kind of just took it and then didn't do anything with it. And I know that I have a lot of friends who are best when they're building things, and I've seen them when they get a chance to use their hands, or they have, I don't know, like just things that they can use to show it physically, they do so much better than when they have to do everything that's completely written down on paper. So I really think we need to keep diversifying the curriculum by putting in more projects where we can use our hands and physically and keep going with presentations so that auditory learners can keep presenting through the word of mouth, and of course still having those visual options because the majority of students have visual, but I think it's really important that we have those options for the people who need it, because it's just not fair to give one option and only one type of student succeed, because everyone needs to have a fair chance at success. So that's most part for my assessments. And for my final thing is some of the mental sides and the minds of students and what they want to change. So this is mostly going to be just some of the other smaller ideas that I came up with. There's not many, but these are just a few more changes that I'd like to see in our school system. So the first one is life skills and teaching for the real world. I know, speaking personally from my school system, I don't think there is enough teaching of real world examples. So I asked 2 questions here, another 2 questions in the survey, which was, the first one is, are you being taught skills that would really help you in the real world? And 45% said some of them, so that's a good thing. I think we're on a good start. But then 13.6% said not really. So I think we're on a good track, but I think we need to add more. And so one of the other questions I asked, what job students want to have, and then I asked them, just to give some context, I asked some high school students, I asked some elementary students, I asked some teachers, but this one was mainly for the students. I asked what job they want to have when they were older, and then I asked the question, are you being taught what you need to know to be able to succeed in this job, just basics wise? And 42.4% of them said no. So I think that we really need to add more of this. We're seeing a lot of this in math with currency and learning about debit cards and credit cards, which I think is a very good thing. But I think we need to see more in all of our subjects. For example, language, because let's say you need to sign a legal document, right? I have a newspaper route for my street, and I remember the first time I saw a piece of legal document that I had to sign for the job, it was kind of terrifying because I didn't know what to do. Besides, should I read through all of it? Do I sign on all the lines? Do I just sign on the last line? So I think it's important that we incorporate them into all of our subjects when we can. And then second last one here, just quickly, is talking about mental health, which is, I'm really proud of what I'm seeing in my school. I think we're seeing, especially where I'm living, I hope that this is the case for the rest of my friends around the world, is, are there enough resources for your learning style and mental health? So 66% said yes, which I think is a good thing, but that's still left 32.4% saying no. So I think we're on a good track, but I personally think we need to ask our students what they really need before we do like meditation or deep breathing, because this is very helpful for some students. But some students maybe need to take a break and go outside, and maybe just even having a period outside. Everyone's different. So I think it's important that we take the input that we need from our students before we decide what they need for their mental health. And then my final quick thing, which I think is also really important, is bullying. So we hear a lot about this, and I know that this is a really difficult thing to fix, because everywhere you go, it's going to happen. There's always going to be someone who's trying to put other people down because of their own insecurities. So it's really hard to fix it overall. But I think we really need to focus on this, because the 2 questions that I took on bullying, the answers I got were pretty shocking. I mean, I knew that some people wouldn't be satisfied, but there was a lot more than I thought. The first question I asked was, do you think bullying tactics are really working? And we had 59% said no, And then the second question I asked is, do you think everyone's being treated equally at our school? And 33.9% said no. And so I really think we need to focus on this, because this is really, when it comes down to the basics of school, this is the most important thing, that everyone feels safe at school and feels comfortable. So I think that we really need to keep working on this. I'd say this was one of my top priorities, along with assessments. So thank you for listening. I'll just wrap it up with a quick conclusion. So how I intend on continuing. At home, I'm going to keep teaching my family and my friends this. I mean, a lot of my friends have been in on this project with me, so I'm really lucky to have some people to do this with. At my school next year, I'm going to hopefully, maybe, I know I'm pretty young, so the best I can do at my school is probably making school parliament and hoping to maybe make some of these changes as I go into grade 8, since I'll be the oldest in my elementary school. Throughout my community, I'm going to hope to keep talking to my trustees and keep going to these council meetings, just to keep pushing these ideas further, because I really think we need to see them immediately, some of them, just to make it'll just make things so much easier for some students. And then globally, I'm hoping to continue taking any opportunity like this that I can to help spread the word of my ideas and my projects, of just these simple things that can change so much in school. So thank you so much for listening. I'd love to take questions from my host and co-host now. I think at the end, they will have my email in a link so that you can email me if you have any questions or any opportunities you'd like to share with me. So thanks so much for hearing about my area of passion and how I intend on improving my community as a whole.
Well done, Ray. Well done. So I've got to tell you just an observation. You are a natural and a very impressive presenter. It's laid out so nicely, and it even for me who hasn't studied this subject, you've laid it out in a way that's easy for me to understand, and you're tying it all together, and I really appreciate that. You might have said this at the beginning, but I don't remember hearing this either at your gift presentation or here. Why did you do this to begin with? Did you have a school project you had to do, or was there something else that compelled you to study this and to learn enough about it to be able to share it like you do?
Yeah, so the first thing is I'm pretty interested in psychology from the beginning. It's always been an area of passion, just learning about like what we can change, what people really want, what's going on inside our minds. And so that's a part of it. And then also my friend Yanina, who I talked about in the presentation once or twice, who you maybe know, she told me about an opportunity there was a council once a year for parents, students, teachers to just talk about what they want to see as a change. And she asked me if I wanted to come. And I was like, yeah, that sounds like a cool idea. So I was starting to think of ideas of what I wanted to change. And that was my assessment one, was the one I talked about. And I was like, okay, but then when I realized it was more of a long-term thing, I just started to think about how important this was and how I wanted to see it sooner. And I think the further I got in, the more important I realized it was, and the more I wanted to go further with it and just keep pushing that to my community and globally here.
Ray, that was very good. If you don't mind, just give you some life advice, okay? The secret to success in life is to find out what you're good at and then do that, okay? And you have a very methodical, organized mind and personality. And so I would recommend that you keep doing these kinds of things, addressing a problem, researching it, putting it together, and giving presentations to people. You're very, very good at that. So please keep that up. My question, though, is that have you considered what are the consequences of this proposal if it was put into action? You talked about how it might benefit students, but how would it impact parents? How would it impact teachers? How would it impact, frankly, the cost of school? You mentioned that you're not in charge of school. Those people are. And part of your presentation needs to address their questions and their concerns. So have you thought about that?
Yeah, I have. Especially for the assessments one, I realized that would, for one, it would make things complicated. There would have to be a change in curriculum, because to have more options, that obviously means it's just going to complicate things. And second, I can understand how, especially with the physical sense, the kinesthetic part, how that would raise some extra expenses for the school board. And I can see how that would definitely be something that would be a consequence of starting that. But I think that personally, for the complication of things, I think it's a complication worth taking, because I just think, I know that if they invest in that, they'll just see the grades of so many students go up higher than what they've seen before, because you're having these different options. And I think it's worth putting some expenses in for, maybe, because I understand all expenses are important, but I think that this is something really important, because this is one of like the base concepts of school, is you learn things and then you're assessed on them. And I think it's very important that every student has a chance to be assessed so that they can best explain it. So I think that even though at first you might see some expenses that will cost the school board, I think that in the end it'll end up paying off, and you'll see just more population into the school board and more money coming in for them. So I think it's long-term. It's a long-term project, but I think that it would pay off.
You said something a second ago. You said a line that this would help students be assessed best. I'm thinking that's what your words were. And I'm thinking just reversing that a little bit and saying how students would be best assessed. Maybe I have that backwards. I mean, the point is, it's not just offering options, it's offering an opportunity for the student to shine the best they can in whatever way that is. And it's important that we offer those options to them. There's nothing wrong with somebody being a different type of learner. It's up to the system to be able to define, okay, this is the type of the learner they are. So on that scale, how good are they doing, or what do they need help with? And we have to make those changes to make that happen. There is an effort, I've heard about it here in the States, I'm not sure about in Canada, to stop looking at assessments and looking more at the experiential learning that kids are going through. And I know that there's a Professor Leslie Flynn at University of Iowa. They do some things with, what is the device? What is the system they use, Jake? It's it's not a journal. I can't get the right word in my head at the moment, but they go through and they plot what these students are doing through their whole school career, basically. And that's the assessment. They're assessed on what they've accomplished and what they've done, not what they scored. And she's quite the advocate for it. And I've heard a couple other people. I don't think it's widely accepted yet, but I think it's you're heading in the right direction, and hopefully at some point that trend will catch up with where you're going with this. I know that you mentioned that your friend has co-hosted for the Global Innovation Field Trip. Can we tempt you into hosting in October?
I would be honored to do that. Yeah,
Yeah.
I would love to do that.
Good.
You'd be a really good host. I can tell just by the way you deliver information and your very thoughtful responses and questions. And I'm sure your friend would enjoy having you on there as well. I think this was the first one that she had co-hosted, maybe in July.
Yeah, that was her first one.
She did very well.
Great. Ray, I don't know if I have time for one more question, but I really loved your comments about real world skills. And I was a teacher, and I proposed giving a class on real world skills for students. And I got a tremendous amount of flack. I got the flack from the parents because the parents wanted their children to go to college. And they said, if my child learns how to read a contract, is that going to help them get into college? And the answer was no. And so the parents didn't like those kind of courses. You need to address those concerns. The parents weren't being evil, but it's a different focus that they had.
Yeah.
I'm not sure why we ever got away from those to begin with, because when I went to school and probably when Jake went to school, some of these things were taught. I mean, you were taught to
Right.
you were taught to take care of your bank account and to figure out how to do that. You were taught in school to drive. You were taught to change a tire. You were taught, there's so many different little things that make you self-reliant that you were taught. You were taught, what does it mean to be a good employee? What does that good employee look like? How do you stay at a company for a long time? And I know that the world has changed, jobs have changed some,
Right.
but not how to be a good employee. That shouldn't have changed. So I don't know when it ended, but you could definitely see a difference in the generations as you have students who now are going to college and don't know the first thing about balancing their
Right.
accounts and what it means to take care of themselves.
Well, Ray, I think in your proposal, you need to address those concerns of parents about, about how is it going to help their child, and also address the concerns of teachers. How is it going to help their day and help them work and impact the students? So you have wonderful ideas, but it's all from the student's point. But the students aren't in charge. You need to figure out who the bosses are and make them happy. But excellent, excellent.
And then later in your life, Dr. Rei Burke, I think that you should be looking at not just students, but the workforce in general. How does time impact the workforce in general? Are we getting the right sleep? Or, these people that have to adjust their bodies to a third shift, is that not like crazy? I mean, maybe there's other solutions out there, and it sounds like something you should be tackling once you get the whole school thing resolved and implemented the way it should be. Well, very, very good. I appreciate you coming on today, and we look forward to watching what you do and seeing where you take this. And if there's anything at all that we can do to help, if you're doing any additional surveys or anything and you need input from students around the world, we'll happily set you up with some kids that you can survey outside of your area if you want more context for what you're doing. And otherwise, we look forward to seeing you at the October Global Innovation Field Trip as a guest host.
Excellent.
Thank you.
And just as a reminder, everybody, to sign up for the Global Innovation Field Trip, just go to globalinnovationfieldtrip.org and sign up as a presenter, or you can join us and watch the event, or do both. Any last words, Jake?
No, between the two of you, you've said it all. I have a whole list of things I was going to ask questions about, and she covered them.
Very thorough. Ray, thank you so much.
Thank you.
And for our listening audience, we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
Thank you for joining us today for the Innovation World podcast. Innovation World is your go-to source for all things innovation, invention, and entrepreneurship. Our website is www.innovationworld.org.